Hello and welcome. My name is Emily Prieto, and I'm the co-founder of Seeds of Tao, alongside my husband, Joshua Prieto. If you're new to the podcast, this is a podcast for impact entrepreneurs creating regenerative enterprises. We often get asked what exactly a regenerative enterprise or impact entrepreneur is. So if you're wondering, a regenerative enterprise builds triple bottom line profits through the practice of ethics and principles that lead to a more inclusive, fair, and balanced economy. Impact entrepreneurs, or regenpreneurs as we like to call them, are those willing and able to take on the financial and personal risks of starting and building regenerative enterprises. You'll get to know exactly what all that means as you join us for this and future episodes, but know that we welcome everyone to join us as we work to build regenerative economies together. That's exactly why we're doing what we do at Seeds of Tao. Our mission is to help establish regenerative economies in every bioregion by serving individual regenpreneurs like yourself. In this podcast, you'll hear the startup stories in all their glory from impact entrepreneurs all over the globe. You'll learn and grow the skills of building a regenerative enterprise from your peers, mentors, and leaders. Finally, we'll get to know each other as you engage in the podcast and join the wonderful regenerative business economies ecosystem, aka Regen B, an open community where peers, colleagues, funders, allies, and supporters of regenpreneurs come together to build the regenerative economies of the future. Join us every month for a wonderful episode as we collectively move beyond sustainability and into our regenerative future. It all starts now.
Hello, welcome to the Seeds of Tao podcast. Noma and I have another great podcast episode for you, an interview with a good friend, Clare Hedin. She is one of the OGs of our regenerative entrepreneur think tank, or what at the time was actually what we called our mastermind. And I had her on the podcast a while ago. We've had several conversations and we wanted to share her interview. It's a unique one. I had a hard time finding where it fit in. And Noam, you can maybe share your thoughts on this as well. But for me, Claire's work has been a lot of interesting pathways where she's been trying to figure out how music has a connection to the regenerative movement. And we've had a lot of conversation around it. I personally have a deep connection to music. It's one of those things that helps me through the day, I feel like it regenerates myself, right? As a person, like I can listen to music and break down some emotional barriers or this, that, and the other. But there's messaging also. I think of Formidable Vegetable, which is one of my favorite like permaculture bands. They just like sing about permaculture things, right? And they do it in a fun way. And it's kind of jazzy and also indie rockish. I don't even know how you call it, but it's got a good message to it. And I think that's moving towards the regenerative realm. Thoughts on it? No, is there anything for you that helps you regenerate yourself, or you feel like brings a positive message towards regeneration? How can music do regenerative outcomes?
You're talking to a person whose default content consumption is having sports content shouted at him at 2x speed through his podcast player. Okay. But that's not to say that I don't also recognize the kind of calming effects of the right music to the right situation. There's a reason the only adornment in my office is a band poster behind me. I'll be honest, I hadn't really ever thought of music in through that regenerative lens. But, if forest therapy and nature therapy are things, and sound therapy is also, it can have the same effects. And I'm really curious to hear how Claire kind of ties that into her work. And, it's obviously music can elicit an emotional reaction. So it makes sense that it can help to calm the mind, right? And then it's just a question of how can that be used to communicate regenerative principles? The idea of a permaculture band, by the way, is not something I had ever considered. I like, are they exclusively woodwind instruments harvested regeneratively, or?
I don't know what instruments they play on actually. Well, I know they have like a I think some of it's like a ukulele. There's like flute and stuff in there, but they speak. The messages are Formidable Vegetable is the name of the band. Are permaculture principle, like they're teaching as they're singing, and it's entertaining and it's fun as well.
That's cool.
So I think there's that part. There's this. So we're coming into possibly the next couple weeks, having a deeper focus on the health, the health and wellness realm of the permaculture flower, right? We're moving from like the land and nature stewardship into that realm. And that's kind of where we'll be lingering, hopefully, as we find the right conversations from past interviews and those types of things. So I think it fits into this, where there's kind of this health and wellness piece of it. A lot of what Claire is proposing and her narrative and story that she brings to the ecosystem, I think, is in that. How do we break down barriers? How do we move through our emotional states and do some healing as well? Like, I'm a huge Rage Against the Machine fan, right? Growing up, and I don't listen to it as much anymore because, well, one, I have like 4 little ones, and I don't probably need to be bringing those energy. But that band in particular, like, released a lot of like really rebellious energy for me in my youth of like, down with the machine. I'm so sick of this crap, and that I feel like it frees up, it opens energy for us. There's a lot of different things there. So, I mean, that's my 2 cents on the conversation that we'll have. But I think there's so much more that we can really build in to this. Any last thoughts on that?
I think that's some great table setting, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation when we jump in.
Let's do it. All right. Here's Clare Hedin.
All right. Hey, Claire. How's it going today?
Hi, Joshua. Everything's good. The sun's shining. I'm here in California, enjoying being indoors while the sun is shining outside.
Sometimes that's a good thing. When the sun is shining here in Panama, I'm like a hermit. I don't really like to get out, but when it's overcast, it's like perfect weather here. And so I usually like it.
That. Yeah.
I never thought I would say that. I love the overcast, right?
I do too. I have Nordic bones, and so for me, grey skies and a little bit of rain, or the promise of rain, is I just like it. I like the temperature of the wind when it's like that.
So yeah, like dry season here is like not my favorite season. It's actually like when it's raining almost nonstop here. So, but it also is nice to go out and have fun in the sun as well. So it's good. It's good to see you. I mean, we chat every now and then. We used to like always chat like weekly because we used to do the weekly Regenpreneur think tanks. You and several other friends were on there. You were kind of like the OGs of the think tank.
What's an OG?
Original gangster, right? Have you?
I love that.
I mean, there's other definitions, I'm sure, but like that's something I guess my generation grew up with, the OG. But yeah, it's been nice to kind of reconnect lately, and you mentioning that we should do a podcast. So you're here. I just want to kind of dive in and talk more about your day, how you're doing, help people to get to know you a little bit better, Claire. So Claire is, and just so those that are listening, Claire is a musician, an entrepreneur, and Claire, it's Clare Hedin, right? Do I pronounce your last name right? Because I never really say your last name. I just say Claire.
Hedin. So
Hedin.
head, and then Hedin.
Hedin. Okay, there we go.
It's Swedish. Yeah, so it's different.
I don't know that I've ever said your last name out loud to you, and so I just never think of it. So
right.
So yeah, tell me about what got you up this morning. Tell us a little bit about your day. How are you doing?
Well, I have a feeling I might need to do a tiny bit of singing just to get really embodied, because I'm kind of in my head a little bit right now. So I might do that. But generally speaking, I've already been in a 1.5 hour meeting with, in kind of a boost. It's called a booster camp. And it's for people who do music for sync licensing. And, this community I'm in, every month, a new person from the world of sync licensing, which I can explain if you'd like, hosts a boost camp online, and you show up and they listen to some of your music and they give you feedback on what they think it could do with to help make it sync licensable.
Huh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So, and sync licensing is essentially when people can use it for other things. Is that right? Or?
Yeah. So, well, sync licensing in particular is very specific. And so that's to do with when you synchronize music to something visual.
Okay.
So that could be film, TV, it could be commercials. What else could it be? Teaser, trailers, like all sorts, anything visual that you see. That I guess it could even be a still image, but something visual that they're trying to promote or bring people in, get people's attention. All of that has music connected to it, all of it. Whether it's TV or streaming or however that's happening for you as the viewer. And they need loads and loads of music. So there are very specific things that you have to do to make it easy for them to say yes. And some of them are very technical things, like you have to leave a tiny bit of space in between the verse and the chorus, for instance, so that for editing, they can do that, because they don't want to have to do anything beyond kind of chopping and moving things around to make it work for what they're doing.
Is that the same for audio as well? If like I'm doing it like for the podcast, is it still called sync licensing? Like,
no,
is that different?
Because what we're doing right now as a podcast is in real time, and we don't have a background piece of music. If you had a background piece of music, you'd have to license it if it wasn't yours. But I don't think that comes under sync licensing.
Yeah, so because like I purchased some things for the beginning and end, for our intro and outro, and for other things that we do video wise. But a lot of the stuff that we do is audio still. So I'm wondering if that is sync licensing.
So I think that would probably be licensing, but I'm not an expert. I'm learning more about it in order to kind of have that be part of how I earn my living on this planet.
Yeah. It's always interesting because a lot of artists actually become marketers or graphic designers, or like they get into marketing because that's one of the ways that it provides for livelihood. I've noticed as creatives, right? And so you often have to find what way that's butting up into our current economic system. And as a regenerative person, it's like someone that's trying to create a regenerative enterprise, we always have like, at least I do, some of the thoughts of like, is this actually being used for, what I want it to be used? Or, like, do you have any of those thoughts, or is it just like,
Well, I'm still very new to it. So I think those kinds of thoughts are what have kept me away from being more commercially minded with my music, because I had such, I did not like the advertising industry per se because of its connection to an industry that grows 3% every year and so on, regardless, or an economy, I should say, not an industry. So knowing the kind of systemic nature of things, I've always had a bit of an issue with advertising. And it's funny because I would have actually been very successful in advertising because I'm a real storyteller. and I tend to think in terms of scenes. But at the same time, it's like I can't do that because I'm not willing to sell things. But sync licensing is you basically don't. I mean, the way it works is they send out briefs. The supervisors, music supervisors, or people in charge of libraries, music libraries, and just like if someone was a filmmaker, they get a treat. You know, they have to submit a treatment, and then they get the job or they don't to make the film. And so with the music, we already make the music up front. So we make music that we like. So it's got us in it. And then, like I said, there's some tiny tweaks you have to do just from a practical perspective in terms of how it's edited. So you don't write a song that promotes something you don't believe in. You're still you with your own ethics. But where it gets used, I think we don't necessarily have a lot of control over where it gets used, but we know what we're submitting for. So like there's a program that I've never watched, I know of it, called The Young and the Restless. And so there's a brief for songs for that because they have a cafe scene apparently that repeats and they need music sort of in the background. So it's a lot of it's for drama. And my focus is on stuff ideally for film, you know, because I really love films, movies.
Well, it's an interesting step into your day and the life of a musician. So thank you for kind of giving us a little tutorial on this whole sync licensing and licensing in general. It's something that I've always had the interest to dive into, being an artist, but never really went that route at all. So it's always something that like, when you're a little kid, you always want to be the voice musician or be in a band and those types of things. I always had those, but I never followed through.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I didn't. I had no plans. Most of my life, the stuff that's been interesting is not stuff I planned. So I didn't have aspirations. I was very intimidated by music as a child. I loved music as a teenager onwards, listening to it. But in terms of playing it, I was trained classically. And like most people in the UK, how we were taught piano, for instance, was so not fun that there was no sense of, these are the roots of the pop songs I love. Right? There was no correlation made between the music that we would listen to that was contemporary for our age group and the stuff we were learning how to play, which was always classical. It's much better now. Music in schools is so much more contemporary and relevant. You know, there's a lot more dynamism to how music's taught in schools now than it was when I was at school. It was very solitary.
So it was very divided, I guess you could say, or just separate from like everything else.
It was old school. It was classical music. If you happen to love classical music, then great. But it wasn't contextualized. Like you weren't learning an instrument and playing it in a band or with a group, or studying the music history of that time. You know, like it would have been so much more interesting to see how it was relevant. But they're the classic pieces that everyone used to learn how to play. So it's just the way it was. But the practicing was very isolated, little upright pianos in these rooms only big enough for an upright piano, kind of like a toilet cubicle. You know, it's just got enough room for the toilet. And, you know, if you're lucky, it's wide enough that you can get in without having to sort of circle around the side of the toilet bowl.
Oh, really? Wow.
That's public toilets for you. That's not what this podcast is about. But yeah, the piano rooms, the practice rooms were all, you just had this piano in a room on its own, and they were really soundproofed as well. So, but at least they had a view. Like I had the windows all down the side of the building looked onto a forest. So I had that. That was kind of a feature.
fun. I mean, schooling is, I think, changing, and it has changed in many ways, even since, I'm like 11 years since I was in college or whatever, university. And so I'm sure it's changed quite a bit, even in my time period. And by the time my kids get to it, it'll be, even if they decide to go, quite a bit different than what I perceived it being. There's this next conversation really is what I want to get into, your work and what really drives you to do the work that you do. And I know that I didn't know before that music wasn't where you were thinking about in your youth ending up, but this is where you're at. You've now even embraced regeneration as in your art, and as a regenerative artist. And I look at artists as entrepreneurs in their own right, because they have to run their business and market it.
There's a lot to that side of it. Yeah.
And so I want to kind of take us to that conversation now of the work that you do. Give us a little bit, what gets you excited to do the work, but also tell us what it is that it is. Regenerative sound healing, regenerative music. What is that, right? I'm still trying to grapple with it myself.
Yeah. So rather than give you a verbal answer, I'm going to give you a musical answer. Okay.
I would love that. That would be awesome.
So let me just, I just got to get my instrument out of my little sleeping place. So this is a shruti box. And I use this to sing to. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to turn on my original sound for musicians. You may need to mute for a moment, Joshua, so that we don't get feedback. Because of that original sound being on. And that means it won't cut off the sound of this, which is kind of a drone instrument. And I haven't put in a special microphone, so I don't know what the quality will sound like. Is that good? So then I'll just sing a little bit. So before I just want to say to anyone who's listening right now is to just feel yourself, feel your body, and that sense of do you feel more expansive? Do you feel like typically people will feel more expansive and more grounded, and just more connected. And a lot of that mind chatter or nervous energy and so on just kind of goes away. So that's really the crux of the work I do with music from a sound healing perspective, is that I'm working directly with energy. And even though I'm not doing it cognitively, rationally, in terms of the frequencies, intuitively, there is an awareness of what frequencies to use and for how long and with what kind of timbre, like soft, warm, round notes, or edgy, like driving notes, more like which I might use in a direct one-to-one sound healing, to cut through, literally sonic surgery in a way, to cut through a painful area in someone's body. But even with that, I'm not physically standing over that part of the body with the sound. It's just in the room. It's sort of a collaboration between me and the spatial, in the intelligence of the spatial kind of environment.
Right. I mean, that's. I want to just mention how it made me feel, and yeah, it wasn't very expansive. It kind of puts me into more of like my spiritual self or spiritual being, right? Is kind of what I feel. And for me, I mean, that's probably different from someone else, right? And so it's probably different from person to person. But yeah, it kind of puts me in this more spiritual trance, more meditative state really quickly, and it allows me to. I can only speak from my own point of view, but it allows me to feel the spirit. And I'm a Christian, and so I would say it in that way. But others would probably say it in another way, of like feeling something that's greater than myself, and being able to kind of commune with a higher power and kind of put me into that piece, right? So, and you were saying expansive. That's kind of what it does for me, right?
Yes.
I get like a feeling in my neck, like almost like I feel like goosebumps or whatever, or the chills or whatever, and then it kind of just goes into my heart and it stays there, right? Is where
it's a lovely feeling, and it is very much a communion, as you say. I love that about it. I love that it immediately reminds my whole being that I belong. And that's actually my website. I changed the sort of tagline on it a number of months ago, and it says Clare Hedin, a journey of belonging. And that's what my focus, that's my whole life has been, this exploration of what does it mean to belong? Where is home? What does it mean to be home, to be at home and to be home? And is that somewhere outside of me or somewhere inside of me? And that, how that links in with belonging. And I think from a regenerative perspective, inclusion is a big part of regenerative living. So whether or not it's trying to include all the parts of ourselves, known and unknown, or whether it's trying to include the diversity of society, and recognize the strength in that, I immediately just suddenly flashed on a history lesson from when I was at primary school, I think, or maybe early secondary school, where we learned about, I think it was the plague and potatoes, like that. In Ireland, they had reduced the kinds of crops they grew, and they only grew a certain kind of potato, and then that potato got diseased, and so they were all starving because they did monoculture. And that was like one of the most famous original stories about why monoculture farming is such a bad idea, because it's just not robust. It's not resilient. And anything that's robust and resilient is regenerative, in my understanding of things.
Yeah. And this, when you're doing this work, And do you call it regenerative sound healing, or what's the label that you put on? I guess
partly sound alchemy, which is sort of an umbrella term, because the sound alchemy piece is that alchemy means to change, to transform something. And I've noticed that, as you pointed out, the minute I start singing, and whether, in particular, I think with voice, but that intention is whether in the piano too, if I'm playing the piano, like the who we are travels into everything that we do. And I've just noticed that it can change a state of being and our state of consciousness very easily. And so for that reason, I don't know if everything has to be categorized as healing as much as something that's able to reconnect us to the possibilities of our aliveness that come with being systemically oriented, how we're interlinked with everything. And so when we change, however temporarily or permanently, but when we change or are changed by something, then all of a sudden the view changes too. And so it's a wonderful way to kind of have a lived experience of the alchemy of life itself, that life is responsive. It's really a narrative of responding between things, energy talking to each other, to itself through each other. And whether that energy comes in the form of music or building something together or brainstorming, arguing, it's all energy moving, tussling around.
Let's take a moment for a promotional break to tell you about a course Seeds of Tao has just released in its beta form. The entrepreneurs that listen to this podcast want to see change. We want to be the change, and we want to bring that change. We want to change the culture from an extractive and degenerative one into a permanent regenerative one, a culture that cares for its people, planet, and future. This is the reason why so many entrepreneurs we talk to at Seeds of Tao start regenerative enterprises. They don't do it for the money. They do it because they want to see change. The challenge is that it's hard to build a business, especially a regenerative one, that is the catalyst for change. I often interview and speak with individuals that have managed to build a business and livelihood from their passion. And they often tell me that they wish they could do more, or they feel like their efforts aren't enough. They want to scale their efforts and the efforts of others, but they don't know how. Don't we all feel this way sometimes? We see our neighbors, industry, peers, suppliers, producers falling further into degenerative practices, and we think, I've made the change. Why can't they? How can I get them to change? We know it's hard to change, and for some, it's harder than others. We also know that we can't change others, only ourselves. We can, however, pave the way for change and make it easier for the next person to be that change. That path always starts with a story. Seeds of Tao has launched its first online course for regenerative entrepreneurs, and its objective is to help you pave the way to regenerative change through the power of your brand story. You'll learn to naturally grow and scale your business using brand storytelling and other inherent marketing systems that have stood the test of time. As you do this, you'll learn to do it in a way that influences change, not forcing change. No, we should never do that. It never works. Nor should we manipulate, even though it's an unethical way to make things work. Let's be a positive influence through the story and the message that we put out. The course is called The Story Seed, and it's the first of 6 initial courses we're releasing to help regenerative entrepreneurs build the regenerative economies of the future. The first 500 students to enroll in Story Seed will gain lifetime access to this course and the other 5 courses in our initial catalog. To give you an idea of what some of those courses will be, in addition to Story Seed, which covers marketing and messaging, we're building a funding and finance course and a course that helps you navigate the cultural forces and flows that you face as you create systematic and cultural change in your industry. On top of lifetime access to the Pando Academy course catalog, you'll be able to join us for weekly office hours, utilize step-by-step action workbooks, get discounted prices on other offerings, and other amazing benefits. This is a beta offering, which means you're helping us pioneer an education platform and accelerator for regenerative entrepreneurs. If you're an innovator and early adopter building a regenerative enterprise, come pioneer this with us by following the promotional link in the description or show notes and enrolling in StorySeed. Okay, let's get back to the episode.
Messages in Water by
Photo.
Yes.
Photo.
Always kind of makes me think that's like if that research is definitely correlated to the work that you're doing, right? But it's
yeah,
in a lot of ways
so.
we're
It's
carrying
structure, isn't it?
It's energy, and how does energy resonate through things? Well, in a lot of ways, it gets
it is things.
It's our water, right?
Yeah,
and through water, it can store energy, and we're made up of water. In a lot of ways, I feel like that's one of the ways that we resonate with one another. Is we're all made up of the same things, and when you're vibrating on a certain level or a certain energy, there's that resonance, and that's essentially what you're kind of trying to convey a certain energy out, right?
Well, so some people do sound healing in water because water is such a great conductor of energy. But to remember also that water itself is just a form that energy takes. So all of it is ultimately energy. All of it, if it's energy, it's vibration, because vibration is the motion, things being in motion. So Michio Kaku, who is a contemporary physicist, I think he's a theoretical physicist or a quantum physicist, I forget which he identifies as. But he talks a lot about string theory. He's a huge fan of Einstein, but as his own person, he talks a lot about string theory, and he says that is a lovely piece. He says in a radio interview about the universe being music, and so many people knew that. You know, I think Kepler was one, the music of the spheres. Like it's a lesser talked about subject, but I feel like there's so much more to know. And at different phases of my life, I've gone more deeply into that research and lectured on it and prompted conversations on it. And I feel another mode of that coming, actually, because who I'm around kind of stimulates where my attention goes. And so more recently, I've been around a lot of musicians and people who do mixing of music, which means that we are listening all the time to frequencies. Because mixing is about relationship between frequencies, so that the right thing stands out, but it's well supported by the other instruments, for instance. Yeah, I think our evolution, the evolution of our consciousness is linked to a better understanding of vibrational frequencies and how to use those in a way that opens our minds and our sense of optimism even. Hence, again, sound alchemy. There it is in my little right next to my name.
Yeah.
Transformation.
I love The Alchemist, right? The book The Alchemist.
Oh, God,
the story of the someone going through their own transformation and realizing their personal legend, right? And in a lot of ways, like that's what I'm getting it going towards those moments where I'm trying to find a meditative state or trying to understand something about myself. It's changed to find, where I'm going, where I want to go, and really to be directed by something beyond myself, right? To find where I'm interconnected. And so you mentioned your work being a huge finding finding, I forget the exact word that you used, but finding belonging. Is that the word that you used? Belonging?
Yes, belonging. That's not my work. That's my life.
Mm-hmm. Your life.
Yes.
I look at work as life, and it's yes. It's a part of your life, right?
It's a part of my life. But that journey is the whole of my life. Like it's the driver for my life.
Mm-hmm. It's your
that
purpose.
Goes into my art, my writing, my conversations, my relationships, my music. It goes into everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of my theme music, if you will.
Right.
And what does it mean to belong? Like for all the species here and all this alienation that we do with othering, that's affecting people's belonging. And when we don't feel like we belong, we disassociate. When we disassociate, we do harm. Deforestation, for instance, pollution, for instance. You really can only do harm when you don't have an empathic relationship to something. And if you don't feel like a belongingness is a shared experience, that's why it was so convenient to just decide that anything that wasn't human didn't have consciousness, wasn't sentient, couldn't feel, could not be officially harmed.
Mm-hmm.
Because it made it easier for us to industrialize life. But that foregoes our accountability and our potential for relationship, proper, right relationship.
Yeah, that right relationship is something that's kind of coming up in the regenerative world, and trying to understand that for our own journey and for the work that we're putting into with our entrepreneurial work, the things that we're doing that provide living. It's got to be all in right relation, right? And it's very difficult to find that. So I guess where I want to hopefully get us towards is how this work of helping us be changed through sound. How did this come to be? Like we know that this is what you do, and this is your purpose is to really create that sense of belonging through what you do. How did that come to be? How did you find your purpose and the work that you're doing now?
Well, it feels like there's a film called The Never Ending Story. So it sort of feels like an ongoing story.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm constantly refining it, which has always made it a bit challenging to talk about what I do in a way that people can chew on in bite-sized pieces. Somehow or other, I have felt like I've belonged to things that are always beyond human. So I feel like being a human is just a small part of my experience. It's one little area. But the who I am is something, and it's something, someone sounds too localized. It's an experiencing that travels. It travels through layers of reality, which is why I'm so appreciative of quantum physics, because that's one of the few places where they talk about this, and it's considered somewhat respectful. Right? If it's talked about in metaphysics, it's just dismissed as woo-woo, which is a very unhelpful approach to new information and a wider reference point. And if you're religious, then it's considered faith, but they're all pointing to the same thing, like that there's an embeddedness to the nature of life, and an interdependence, of course, that is once damaged, if it can be damaged irrevocably, then we don't really know what that's going to look like. But I have a feeling it's not going to look good. We see a lot of that with weather patterns and and rising sea levels and so many things. But I don't really have a specific answer for how it began because, even when I was very little, I was always dreaming, like daydreaming in the garden and just being with the flowers and the atmosphere. That's always captured my heart and my love and my imagination. And then I had a massive forest near me where I grew up, from the age of about, I think, 7 or 8, maybe, that I had access to whenever. And so I have always found nature far easier to sit within than human systems, which have always had much more cognitive dissonance for me. Like, they're much more complicated in terms of agendas and how people present, but what's actually going on. Like, there's so much complexity inside one human body that's happening simultaneously. It's a lot. It's a lot to be a human.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, in terms of if you were looking like this, what did I do with my life? In one part, I learned how to play music. In another part, I learned how to do healing work. In another part, I had a strong academic career where I studied fine art, and then I studied transformative learning systems, and then I studied consciousness and consult now with people around creativity, how to access it, how to appreciate it, like how to be in relationship. So not appreciate as a passive kind of thing, but appreciate as a form of engagement with, and the diversity of creativity and the risk-taking involved in creativity. And I think that's what sort of turns me on, is looking at where we could take more risk, because that's where I've tended to go. And it means I've just sort of been a child of the universe, like a child of life itself. Because every time I take a risk, I have to trust it. I have to trust life to know more than I do, that it knows more than I do, and that there is some kind of coherent intelligence that manages things. And again, not in a way that makes us passive, but nature systems, they know how to run themselves.
Right. So, and I just want to dive more into the story of so that people can understand.
I tend to talk somewhat globally.
Yeah, I want people to get to understand you and how this type of work can come to be, or help us to really ponder on it, right? Of like, Claire, this is different work that you've gotten yourself into, right? And
Yeah.
you're mentioning just kind of getting into different aspects, but it's a taking a leap of faith, something that you feel might be risky or something unknown, right? But you follow through on that.
Mm-hmm.
If you can, like, show us, like, just maybe how that looks for us, like in your life, and how you may have gone into something.
I can give you an example. It's kind of an easy one. But first, I want to name something that I want to put a link to for anyone that's listening. It's an article I wrote quite a while ago called "The Light in the Cave," and it describes, like, microscopically, this moment where we're in the cave, like it's dark, and we are looking for things to recognize to help orient ourselves, and therefore to be able to make good decisions. And it's a phase that happens many times in our lives, can happen many times in a week, and it might be small scale or large scale. But an example would be like a project that you suddenly realize you're not qualified with your knowledge base to take it where it needs to go. And so there's a moment of panic, and then and there's a lot riding on it. For instance, or there's a deadline coming up, or something you've got to tell your partner that they're not going to like. So there's a sense of this impending doom. Mm-hmm. We're quite fatalistic, I think, humans. Tend to look
always
at the
other shoe is going to drop.
And so then we'll bury things to try and avoid that outcome. But there is something interesting and alchemical about naming things and noticing things as they are without needing to know what that's going to turn it into. So in another way, saying agendaless, no agenda. But an example for me, actually, I can give you two. I can give you two examples. So the first one is I was in my early 20s. I'd been doing various jobs living in London, and I had this sort of timeline where I would do something for a couple of years, and then I'd either get bored because I knew how to do it, and I couldn't see a way forwards. And then there lived in me this longing. Always there was this longing. Little did I know that that's probably one of the hallmarks of being an artist. I think most artists probably have this feeling of longing, and they can't name what it's for. And that's why we create, because it actually satiates that feeling until the next time. It's what I think it's one of the things that prompts creation.
Is it like a wanderlust or just like?
It's in the solar plexus and the heart. It's a very physical thing. It's not, there's some beautiful words all around the world for this longing. There's a Welsh word which I can see, but I can't say in my mind right now. But two German words are Fernweh and Sehnsucht, and they both, and we can put these in the podcast notes, they are both talking about a longing, and in particular, a longing for something that we've never known. So we can't picture what we're longing. We feel the longing, but we can't name it or picture it, but we know it when we find it, but it may not last forever once it's been satiated. So this thing, it's a form of teleology, really, for us to grow. So there's this something that knows something about something we need that we can't name, but we can sense that it's there. And then we move towards it. This, by the way, is why I did dynamic emergence, which we can talk about in a little bit. But anyway, I want to finish this story. So I was living in England and doing all these really cool jobs, and yet I was not satisfied. And looking back, I can understand now, because I wasn't creating. I was doing things in interesting situations, but I wasn't actually creating from myself. And I had this homing call, like this homing pigeon feeling like I meant to go to the States. But I didn't really know what I would do. So I literally waited about 2 years for more information. It's like, well, give me a plan. Right, if that's what I'm going to do, I need to have some security, please. Mm-hmm. I don't know who I was talking to in my mind, but someone who was in charge somehow knew more than I did. In my imaginings. And then eventually one day I realized, it's not going to come. And the feeling's not going to go. So I have to make a choice. And two people very close to me in my life both reflected back that I'd been talking about moving there for a few years and that I needed to just go and do it. And so I did. And that was 36 years ago now. So I came here to the Bay. I'd never been here in my life. I knew one person, but she was someone I knew from school, but she was in a different year. And when you're younger, being in a different year, you may as well be on a different planet, right? You just don't integrate when you're really young. Those years are really important to identity and friendships and cliques. So that was one story. And so I had to come, in spite of the fact I felt extremely uncomfortable, vulnerable, nervous, didn't really know what I was going to do, didn't know anything, actually. And yet at the same time, it was this incredible, like, freedom, this leaping off point. for the same reasons. It's very much the fool, the zero card of the tarot, where you're leaping off. He always looks rather happy in that picture, and I think that's not very. I don't think that's very fair, because most of us aren't very happy when we're doing that until after we've committed. And I guess in a way he has committed. He's always got one leg out off the side of the ridge. So he's made that commitment, but he hasn't started fooling yet. You never see the Fool card fall. You see him begin his journey. That's what he signifies. So that's one thing. But then another thing is something I've seen a few times in my active career, whether it's painting furniture for someone as a commission, or the most recent example is I had to play a song to a supervisor in a group of people. And I'm very new still to this particular way of looking at things and being analysed. And he said a couple of things that I found just horrendous to hear. And not only horrendous to hear, but especially horrendous because they were being said in front of other people. And he was not being cruel, but it felt cruel. And it was like, I saw all these options for how to react, not to him, but internally. I thought I could just write him off and just think, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Right? Or I could just give up. That was another option. I thought, oh, it's not for me. I'm just going to stop. And then the other option was the most unknown, which was I could do something about this, like make this song meet what he's talking about. And I didn't know how to do that. I thought I didn't. So this comes back to the article I referenced, Light in the Cave, because there's this feeling, if you imagine you're in this darkness and you're on your knees because you don't know if there's a big drop. So you're kind of feeling forwards with your fingers. And I always picture there being kind of wet, glistening stones. And you're feeling your way to find something familiar and a direction to go in. And there is this absolute lack of preparedness, this perceived lack of preparedness. And then at a certain point, because it has to happen, at a certain point, suddenly there's an insight, an aha. And so I procrastinated for maybe 3 days because I really thought, oh, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this. And so it's like, that's a very short sentence and it has a full stop at the end. If I don't know how to do it, I can't do anything. And then I suddenly thought, well, maybe I do know how to do this. And I had a collaborator. And so something about being in the mix with someone else, I threw out this chorus to him because he said the guy had said it needs a chorus. So I threw out the chorus to a collaborator, just recorded it on my phone, sent it to him. I said, what do you think? And he's like, yeah, I really like that. And so we re-engineered the song and put the chorus in different places. And I had to grow to like it because it wasn't initiated by me, the idea of changing it. It was sort of a forced thing. Like if you're running a business and you've got a certain business plan and then the market conditions come up to you and they say, well, actually, if you want this to succeed, you have to have this piece in there somehow, whatever that piece might be. And you might have a personal objection to that piece because you don't like it or you don't feel confident you know how to do it or whatever the reason. Or it's just not, it didn't come from you, right? Just that good old-fashioned ego. And so I think there is this moment of development where we are extraordinarily uncomfortable because it feels as if our very identity and survival is in question. And sometimes I think those are the biggest moments. You must have had this when you moved to Colombia, moments where you thought, what have I done? This can't work. How do I meet this? And then you have to struggle with it. And then in that struggling, something shifts.
Mm-hmm.
That makes me think of the music I sang, because I've done experiments with people where I have them write down a problem, something they're experiencing as a problem. So they write it down. And then I say, okay, so now you've got that taken care of. It exists on paper. You don't have to carry it in your mind right now because you know where to find it. And now I'm going to sing. And then I'll sing for 5 minutes, less.
Mm-hmm.
And then I ask them to have a look at that problem afterwards. And what do they think? Like, what thoughts occur when they look at it? No expectations in any direction. And invariably, either the problem feels like it wasn't actually a problem, or it becomes an opportunity, or somehow it just kind of dissolves in its grasp. Because when we change this territory, and that means an awful lot of risk taking, it's not comfortable and it's not easy. We have to get comfortable with taking risks, and taking a risk in its genuineness means going into territory that's unknown and unfamiliar, and sometimes uncharted.
It's that growth period that we're able to find ourselves and be able to kind of feel our way through the dark is the opportunity for us to actually go somewhere that our mind or body has never been, right? And then to kind of open it up. And yes, I've felt that many times in my life. And you were kind of mentioning it being, several times in a week or a day, even, where you kind of step into the unknown and try to establish some sense of direction, some sense of understanding of where you're at, right? And through that, I think there's the micro leaps in growth and ability to gain a better understanding of who you are and what you're doing and why you're doing it.
It brings you down to the fundamentals, which are basically, do I believe this universe is safe and in my favor? Or do I believe this universe is hostile and against me? I mean, that's how big it is. And I would say that even though it is a period of growth, in retrospect, at the time, it feels like a dying. It feels catastrophically dead end, because you can't see what's next. And so this idea of faith in oneself, faith in the journey, faith in the exploration, it's a big ask to ask ourselves to have faith, because it physically and emotionally and even mentally is so traumatic. Mm-hmm. To different degrees, perhaps depending on the perceived potential loss.
But I want to share just maybe something that I'm going through right now, and maybe we can kind of work through this as well, because I mean, we're at the kind of tail end of this conversation, and I want to bring it back to these entrepreneurs that are working through their own endeavors, trying to make change in their life and in the world, and they're taking on risk, right, to build these enterprises. A lot of times they believe in it. They get into these enterprises on their own accord. It's not something that's forced upon them typically, and so it's a stab in the dark, a chance for them to kind of discover these pieces. For me, I recently just had one of those moments, right? That I started this business. I co-founded it with Emily, and last week we've kind of came to the conclusion, Emily and I, that Emily's not going to be a partner in the business any longer, right? And it kind of took me it hit me at like a brick in the beginning. It was like, where do I go from here? Like, Emily's such a big part of why we did this. And we took a step back and looked at it. And for me, Emily really clearly understood that this is what needed to happen. Emily has a medical condition that's chronic, and we're needing her to step out and focus on health. And that's very clear. And also spending more time on working on focusing on family, and having Emily be just focusing on family and health. And that is what was needing to happen. Like, that seemed very clear to us. But what didn't seem clear was like everything else for Seeds of Tao, the business that we've been working on, how I'm gonna proceed from there. It just seemed like complete stab in the dark. I'm now don't know where I'm going, when just a moment ago I felt like I did know where I was going, right? And so I'm like, okay, what am I doing? What am I doing here? How are we doing this? And it's for me, I feel like as soon as I feel that moment, there is that like dying, but it's like once you take the step into the dark, it's almost like you've already cleared your mind. It's already been like you're already there. You're already trying to figure it out. So I don't feel like, I feel mostly that like rebirthing really quickly, or like an opening of new energy every time I step into the dark, into something, right? Rather than, if I do linger in it, it almost feels like it's the end of the world, and it's this depressive pit, and I can't get beyond. So I guess where I'm trying to go from here is like the work that you're doing with Sound Alchemy. How would, maybe using me as like that reference, how would you help me to kind of work through that and help other entrepreneurs that are maybe going through similar challenges in their own way in their business?
That's a big question. I think the first thing to do is just acknowledge that it is big, and that it feels big, like whatever the perceived challenge is. Because what looks like a challenge to you might not look as challenging from the outside, or it might, so it's like, it's very much an interior experience, this sense of challenge and danger. But if I were to use Sound Alchemy, here's the thing. There's dynamic emergence, which we've not really touched on. So dynamic emergence gives us a sense of how energy works. It's a whole series of online courses that people can do at their own pace. And that's dynamicemergence.net. And on that, they can learn more about the nature of energy, and that there is kind of an order to things, and how we interact with that, how we perceive it, is something we can educate ourselves on. So it's a little different from psychology. It's a little different. It's kind of a little bit of everything, because it's very much looking at the perspective of what is it like to be a living system. So as a human, I am a living system, right? There's so many communities in here. I'm talking just biology and chemistry. And then there's the philosophy of that, and the cosmology of that, and the belongingness, coming back to the belongingness. So the things I would personally recommend are, first, read that article, The Light in the Cave, because you will know you're not alone in this experience. To know that everyone at some point, if they're living a risky life, in other words, not just doing a 9 to 5 and saying, I don't mind if I'm unhappy, right? But actually making deliberate choices and taking responsibility for having a life that feels fulfilling, and trying to fulfill what you feel you came here to do, and to be who you came here to be and what you came here to learn. And then with the sound piece, I think just, and this is something I teach as well, is just toning. If you just do some, like you started us off, Joshua, with doing 7 breaths. And so there's stuff like that. You can do 7 tones where you just sing, not to perform, but to kind of activate, say, hey, I'm here. Like, it activates your cells. It's profoundly impactful very quickly. You don't have to be good at it. You just have to pay attention when you're doing it. So you could do 7 ohms, for instance.
Right.
And that just grounds and changes what's happening. And then the problem itself, nothing is fixed. So dynamic emergence has two tenets. First is that nothing is fixed, and the second is that energy waits to be noticed. So in other words, by paying attention to something, it alchemizes it, and therefore nothing is fixed because it's constantly available. It's made up of moving electrons and quarks and tachyons and whatnot. So it's not fixed. Nothing's fixed. We fix it in place with our perception and expectations. And that God knows what we don't see just because we've expected ourselves to see things a certain way. Like I think about all the beings that might be around that I don't see because I know it would freak me out. But part of me is like, why don't you just try it, Claire, and see what happens. So I guess I choose my risks. But it's an empathy, self-empathy. So recognize that you're being brave. Recognize that you're doing something new. Look for support from people that have practical knowledge, who've done something relatable. You don't have to, you go into the darkness on your own, but once you're in that darkness, there are many friends there that can help. But you have to be willing to make the decision on your own. That's a big thing. Make that decision on your own to go into the cave, into the transformative decision, whatever it is, leaving your husband, your wife, your partner, changing countries, changing careers, whatever it might be for you. Just know that if the impulse is calling you toward it, that you must listen, because if you don't, you're keeping your life small. And I don't think, maybe it's different for different people, but I don't think we were designed the way we're designed metaphysically to remain small. Not to be confused with, if you're living a very contained life, if that's fulfilling you, then other people might look at that and go, well, that's a small life. But we don't know. That's not ours to know. All we can know is whether this arrangement of cells,
the individual knows. Yeah. If what looks like a contained life and something that is devoid of purpose and from the outside, from someone else, from risk or challenge, and therefore from growth and ability to learn and understand at greater levels, gain a greater level of consciousness, then that's your perception. But it has to be from the internal one-on-one person, like only the person that is going through those experiences can say that it's not bringing them satisfaction, joy, belonging, all of those things that's really makes us who we are. So I understand that. So for me, having those grounding moments, like just this week, some of those look different. The micro pieces is like the seven breaths, taking some time to sing a song. Like for me, I don't know that I go straight to ohms, but maybe that's something I should try. Right? It is something I've done in the past.
Whatever pops into your mind, give it a go.
But the grounding moment, I think, is like the more like in the presence. Like you have to have that kind of grounding to be able to move on. And then there's the exploratory part, like you're saying, we're working through the darkness, right? And like feeling your way through. And that in itself can be a process.
Well, yes. So in there, just sort of peering in there a little more, also just acknowledging to yourself that what you're doing makes you feel scared or is scary, either way, because you've got to be able to witness yourself. So if you're feeling scared, then obviously that's what you're going to feel. But then if you can, to recognize kindly, this is scaring me. And then you're noticing it. Energy waits to be noticed. You're noticing it. And in the noticing, it can relax a bit. And then you can start to get pragmatic. okay, what do I need? What are the tools that I need? Oh, and for me, I need to learn how to add in this, and this to this song to make it fit this scenario. Or, I need to learn more about frequencies or whatever it is, But whenever this is very roomy, whenever something's sort of whispering at you and tapping on your shoulder that doesn't go away, that quietly persists. And this is a kind voice. It's not a critical voice. That's a whole different thing. Then to me, that's that quietness, that quietude is actually the place to go and hang out a little bit, to just come back to yourself and that feeling of trust, of largeness, of belonging. And to know that you can't fail, because wherever you get to with it is where you get to with it. So there isn't like a doomsday ending as such. It's just either it will become what you think it's going to become, or it will actually be part of the route to get to another place that you wouldn't have thought of had you not started down that particular track. So being flexible, I think, also to feedback, systemic feedback.
That's a huge limit.
Listen to my music. There's an album called Moon Mist, and I used to use it to do Reiki to for people, and it's 2 half-hour tracks. It's called Passive Listening, and one of them is extremely restorative. It's called Arrival. That's the second track. The first track is called Journey. And they're just loops. They don't change. That's the whole point. And they're like, one of them is really good for working to, because your mind doesn't try and figure out the song because it's so simple. And then the other is kind of restful. And it's fascinating to try and listen to the wrong one for the wrong activity. Like to listen to the restful one when you're trying to do something active is crazy making. So there's something very legitimate about their titles. So
is this something we can find on
ClareHedin.com? ClareHedin.com. All the music stuff and art, painting stuff is all on ClareHedin.com, and the educational stuff is on dynamicemergence.net.
Okay. So for those that are entrepreneurs in this space and you're working through your own journey, making decisions, you've already gone beyond that point of not living a life that's just the status quo at this point, right? If you're
listening to this.
Right. But you're going to be bumping up into this, that, and the other. And as you do so, these are really wonderful resources that you can get involved in, help you, get through a moment of unsurety, find clarity in a very dark place, and really start to make decisions from a more conscious understanding of yourself and going through difficult things, right, Claire?
Yeah, and just to know that it's normal, that everything you're going through is normal, is really helpful. Because oftentimes we're having a difficult time, and because we haven't talked about it with anyone, we don't realize, this is literally what it means like to be a human. It's like sometimes it's really difficult.
Yes, and it is very normal for us to go through this process. That's the thing, is we hear this way too much. I don't know that it's normal. That I don't think it should be normal that we're seeing so much burnout in the world, and we're seeing.
I understand it though. I because it's the result of resistance. So resistance, more than anything, will burn up energy. So you've got all these people who are trying to do. I mean, there's so many people doing burnout, right? Because there's the people who are trying to change the world, but then there's also the people who are living within the system like mad hamsters on the wheel, who are not fulfilling themselves, and that burns you out too. I guess that comes down to self-care as well.
Probably more so. They're probably in equal order. You have people that are either not fulfilling their true purpose and really haven't spent the time, and then they all of a sudden burn out because their life has been lackluster, or
draining them. It's not inspiring them.
Mm-hmm. And then the other side of things, I think probably what we see more in this space is the burnout of someone that is giving their all towards something that is, they feel is worthwhile and worth going after, but then not realizing that they're sacrificing themselves in that process, or martyring themselves, or working through it in healthy ways to truly understand why they're doing what they're doing, right?
And how to do it in a more easeful way as well. Not to keep reinventing the wheel. There's that. And then I think of Bucky Fuller, who his way of I think avoiding the idea of burnout was just create a better scenario that you like, instead of trying to change one that doesn't want to be changed. It's just hard work. It's hard. I mean, that's the issue, isn't it? With political parties that are not behaving in ways that we might perceive as intelligent with regards to living sustainably and encouraging business practices and manufacturing practices that are sustainable. That there's an inertia there, and to try and change that, I don't think that's our way forward. I don't have an ideal, like, here's what will work, but I'm realizing that's not working.
No.
Political activism is not working.
You don't have any control over it, and therefore it creates more anxiety or chances for...
and it's resistance. You're spending money, your energy money, into a closed bank account, effectively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would totally agree with that. There has to be some level of... You have to be able to make the choice, and be able to have the ability to step out of the cave of sorts, right? If you're going to dive into the unknown, you better have the ability to navigate, or else you're like tying your hands with government and with other areas that you really have no control over. You may have influence in, but it takes even politicians and people that do have that influence to make those changes happen. They have taken years to build up that influence to take the small steps towards whatever period or ability to act in that space. Now, if that's what you're wanting to do, I guess that's all your choice, and it really has to be something that you feel like it's calling you. It's what is a part of your purpose, right? Again,
it's unavoidable. It's an unavoidable calling. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Whereas, like, I think most of us would rather go down a different route. Like, I would rather probably just be farming in a rural area, minding my own business, and just get my hands dirty. Was that essentially the skill set that I've been given? Not necessarily. I didn't grow up in a rural situation. I didn't grow up as a farmer, but it is something that has driven what I'm working towards, what what is a part of me. But also, I feel called to work in this space of entrepreneurship, of messaging, of helping the narrative to form in people's minds, that we can see mindset changes. And so I know we're talking around this, but like I think it's also a mixture of having the calling and desire for something, while also really having the ability to act on it, or the ability to put yourself in a place where you have control. And maybe control is not the right word.
But you're making me think of something, Joshua, because I was reminded the other day, someone whose one of their mantras is changing your mindset. And I think you can have brilliant ideas, but if your mindset is in opposition to your vision, then it's going to be a really hard journey, and it won't succeed in the way that you think you want it to. So that's been a huge part, I think, of my journey as well, is being able to identify my mindset. This thing that comes back to, is the universe a safe, loving place, or is it a dangerous, threatening place? You know, to have my back. And of course, ultimately, it's not actually about the universe as such. It's about me, because I am a universe. I'm the universe here, this one. So how we are in relation to our thinking, what kinds of thinking, noticing our thinking, and is our thinking a hostile environment? Pollution is something that happens in here. The corporate pollution and our plastic waste pollution is an externalized version of the inner pollution. Because if we weren't polluting ourselves interiorly, then to do it exteriorly, if that's a word, it's not really, I'm not sure that it could happen. The external is really a manifestation. Something is generating things that happen outside of me. I am, as are you, as is anyone who's listening. So the who we are being internally is actually, I think Michael Jackson said this, that healing's an inside job. Or somebody said it. He might have put it into a song, and it's true. Healing the universe, healing the planet is an inside job, and it starts. It's a localized field. That's why it only takes one person to change the world, because if each of us has this one person as our responsibility, then you simultaneously change things. It's not about changing their behavior, and that's why I think our political approach.
That's it. It's not about changing another person. It's about first changing yourself and having the ability to do so. And not a lot. I don't know that we've all gotten to that point, or we're conscious of that piece in itself. Right? We're always trying to change someone else, and instead forgetting to change ourselves to be that change that we want to see. Right?
Those simple words are the most profound. Be the change you want to see in the world.
It's always accredited to Gandhi, but I don't think he actually said it.
Okay.
I think it was a condensed version of a conversation that he had at one point, and then people kind of put it into those words, right?
And to me, here's the weird thing about life, is that I hear these sayings, these phrases and advice from spiritual teachers, and what I have found for myself, they don't actually mean anything until I'm in the position of which they speak. And so that's tricky. How do we take on spiritual advice when it doesn't really mean anything until we've reached the position from which that view is now history? You know, it's already become. So I think that's quite an intriguing conundrum with regards to how we evolve our consciousness.
It's like that movie, and it's based on a book, Arrival. And I'm actually listening to the book right now. Have you seen the movie Arrival?
With the spaceship?
With the spaceship, and they
the hieroglyphic type writing. Fascinating.
It's very fascinating. Well, and the thoughts that it has in our own narratives that we're telling ourselves, and the way we gain knowledge, and the way language works for us, right, is really interesting. Like the way we are going through this world, that there is something that is going to be said in the future that is going to teach you in that moment, right? And then the opposite of that, something that has been said thousands of years ago, by someone you will never meet, was meant to be said at that point, but also to be related to you in this moment to teach you something, right? And so it's that kind of energy that
so clever. I've forgotten about that little twist in the tale at the end there.
Yeah.
Oh,
well, I think it really lends to this conversation, because what we're trying to say is like you have to be able to kind of stab yourself or put yourself into the unknown. But when you do let yourself get put into the unknown, there is something there that is going to put you into a place that you are then going to be able to understand what happened, something that you may have been told years prior by someone else, and then all of a sudden it makes sense because you actually had to go through that type of experience, like go through some unknown. Whereas if you didn't, and everybody can attest to this in their lives, right? You can always find a way where it's all interconnected, like everything is connected, right?
Yes.
So in that we were talking about it earlier, and which got us in another podcast interview, we were talking about, it started off kind of talking about energy and carrying that energy, water. And we talked about the messages and water, the book. And we were talking about that energy of like thousands of years ago, generations ago, that energy is just being reused and is still the same energy. You know, like the water that I'm drinking is someone else's water from thousands of years ago. And you know, that whole,
like cosmic stardust, but talking in like from a water perspective.
Yeah. So we started going down that route. And what we're saying here is like, it's the same thing, like a thought that carries energy, a message that carries energy may not hit you until you actually dive down, and take the risk to do something else. And you would have never known. And that's why it's cosmic. That's why we say it's cosmic. That's why we say it was, meant to be. Is because that's it was calling you towards something, right?
Yes.
You were supposed to be following. And what you're doing here is helping us to ground ourselves, to understand, to be aware of those moments, to actually feel those moments when you're being called to do something or find ways to navigate that space, right? That we're talking about here.
Yes.
It's very probably too woo-woo for many of us.
Don't underestimate your listeners. Seriously, when we hear something that resonates, sometimes there are other parts of ourselves that need to do some reading or researching or intuiting in order to have the rest of ourselves be able to come and meet it. But we're designed to understand this complexity. So I'm not a fan of avoiding talking about it, because I feel the invitation that's occurring vibrationally within the dialogue is the doorway. Energetically, it's that doorway, and some people will recognize it more easily than others. So to keep that doorway open.
Yeah, I shouldn't discount it, because you get in those spaces where you feel like no one's going to even understand what we're talking about here, right?
Right. And how do we know, right? This is not ours to know. My only business that I can pay attention to is here. What am I generating? Does it feel kind? Does it feel inclusive? Does it feel relevant? And I can't know the answers for the other person or people, whether something's relevant or not. But by paying attention to the energy of it as I'm thinking about it or talking about it, then I know if it's relevant to me. And if it's relevant to me, it'll have an aliveness to it that might make it more relevant for others.
Yeah. I don't know how much further we can take this conversation, or where else we would take this.
To the moon and back.
to the moon and back. I think this is a good place to maybe just talk about your work. We mentioned it a few times, but mention it again for us. What are the places that we can, if we're going through our own risk challenges and working through these pieces and making choices that will help us to gain better consciousness and understanding on what the work that we're doing. Share with us those resources that you have for us.
I appreciate the invitation to do that, Joshua. Thank you. So I can help people in various ways, and I like helping people. One is that I can be a mentor of sorts, a coach, and help you with your actual project. Anything you do with me, if we're doing something interactive, you're going to be part of the equation. So just know that, but it'll always be considered. Like my approach is very considered. So you can email me through either clarehedin.com or dynamicemergence.net, the two different websites, for that kind of input. The other thing is I really encourage people, especially if you're working with other people and you want to be able to language things in a way that meets more of a left brain person, as well as validate the intuitive spatial self, the emotional self, is to study dynamic emergence. It's something you can do on your own time, your own time zone, and you can always reach out to me with questions if you want an individual consult to back up what questions it's kind of prompting in you and in your particular life by looking at this material, which looks at different ways of knowing and being as a way to better understand how we have different knowing biases, how we generate reality. And it's much more trackable than some of the ways we talk about it can sound. It can sound a bit global and wide, but it's actually a matter of learning how to track your own sensations and your mind and the stories we tell, each of us individually, and how that then turns into our reality. So all the new age stuff that I've seen has been amazingly inspiring, but very little that actually tells you how to track things and become like a master tracker of yourself and the work you want to do in the world and are doing. So there's that. There's music. You can always purchase music, whether it's sort of singer-songwriting music or sound healing type music. There's actually a live sound healing CD that I recorded with people receiving a sound healing. So that's called Grief and Praise. But otherwise, there's other kinds of music. So that's all on clarehedin.com/here is one of the pages, or just go to the shop or just noodle around. You can always email me with specific questions. But I think those are the things, right? Or if you have a group that you work with live and in person, whether it's online or physically in person, I facilitate meetings in the sense that I watch the energy and have a bit of a knack for sensing what questions need to be asked that will help things go deeper and get more specific. Mm-hmm. So things like that.
I've every now and then I'll hop on your YouTube, or I listen to you on Spotify for like grounding or whatever, right?
Okay.
And one thing that I've kind of noticed is the work that you do works really well for groups in the fact that, like, yoga retreats and you're doing not even just a yoga retreat, like a business retreat, or you're getting your company together to go through some experiences to awaken and enliven the dynamic of the group, right?
Exactly. Make it authentic and vital, to vitalize it. Revitalize it.
I want to see more of that in some of the group meetings that I go to, and the convergences.
That can be awful.
Yeah, but
sometimes.
But I know that you've been doing yoga, sound bathing and whatnot, right? And
I do.
Being in that realm as well.
Here at Grace Cathedral in San Francisco. It's a beautiful place to sing.
Yeah, every time I get in a cathedral like that, it's like you want to do like a little yip or a little, like ohm or something, and just like hear it resonate and carry in. It's beautiful spaces. So thank you for taking the time to share.
Thank you for inviting me, Joshua.
You're so welcome. It's always a great conversation. I enjoy our time together. For those that are listening, we will have all that we spoke about in the show notes so that you can reach out to Claire as well. And we'll see you on another episode of the Seeds It Out podcast. Bye for now.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the podcast, and it really is a blessing and a pleasure to bring each episode to you. So what'd you think? If you enjoy the podcast, please leave us a review or follow us on the podcast platform of your choice. Each review really does help us further the reach of this podcast and move our mission forward to build regenerative economies in every bioregion. If you have a suggestion or feedback for us, please let us know in the open and free Regenerative Business Economies ecosystem, known as Regen B, which is linked in the description and in the show notes of this episode. Regen B also has an awesome community request form that allows you to suggest guests. Register to be a guest on the podcast and share your own Regenpreneur startup story or any other suggestion you might have for the community. Without your feedback and requests, this podcast and community wouldn't be what it is, so please let us know. Now, this may be bye for now, but remember, it doesn't end here. It has only just begun. The regenerative economies of the future start now with you.